everyone. My name is Nick Piette, Chief Evangelist here at Talend.
Mark Balkenende, Director of Technical Product Marketing at Talend.
And my name's Ryan Edmonds. I work here at Devil's Canyon Brewery, and I'm the production lead.
Perfect. So, Devil's Canyon. Never really heard it in Colorado, and that is in fact true. Mark and I have been able to take this show on the road. We're out here in San Carlos, California, conveniently near headquarters, which is why we're able to do this. But I think it was time to, Colorado brews are great, but we wanted to start taking this. Yeah, exactly. So thank you for having us here today.
Of course.
So give us a sense in the name, right? I was doing some research on the brewery, and if I remember right, like Devil's Canyon, it came from something that was very local, right?
Yeah, so it's named after La Cañada del Diablo, which is close by in San Mateo County.
Okay.
That's where the name Devil's Canyon came from.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long have you guys been around? Or
we just celebrated our 15th anniversary.
Oh, that's
recently.
awesome.
15 years, awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right.
Have you always been at this location? Or
So we originally were actually at location in Belmont, which is just down the street. We moved here about 4 years ago.
That's
Excellent.
really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place.
Yeah, it's really nice having this event space and tons more space for extra tanks and new equipment.
This is a fantastic facility. I know you can kind of just see us and in the back, but you guys have a lot of space here. So outside of just the brewing aspect of it, like what types of things do you guys have here?
So a number of companies do events here, say quarterly reports, or Intel did an event called, I think it was Day Zero Countdown.
Very cool.
Where the whole place was kind of taken over. We also used the annex for that, which is our barrel room, and then some extra walk-in storage. But they took over both buildings, had a bunch of stuff set up here, and they were unveiling some new products. So we do product launches occasionally with some tech companies. Facebook and Google are close by, so they occasionally will have events here as well.
That's really cool.
But as far as our events, we have Beer Fridays every Friday.
Ooh.
And we co-host that with Off the Grid.
Okay.
And they're basically a local food truck company, so there'll be half a dozen or so food trucks here.
Sweet.
And they provide the food, we provide the beer.
What more do you need?
Kids, dog friendly, so
I think we need to
good
be
time.
on a Friday night.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, next time we're going to be here.
We have a couple guys with us behind the scenes that work at Talend. They're very familiar with your Friday night activities.
There you go. Nice, glad to hear that.
So outside the facilities, right, and we got a fine selection of beers that we've got here. So you kind of mentioned we got a huge facility for kind of the brewing, barreling. How many? What is the amount that you guys normally put out? Is it just local to California? Can we find it in Colorado?
I would have to check with our sales team. We are in some other states. We do ship out to Florida. We occasionally have some stuff overseas as well. We deal with Canada a fair amount. We recently opened up the market in New Mexico, which is kind of exciting. That's actually where the owner is from. So
cool.
he's excited to get some beers out there. But yeah, so we're a little bit making our way through the country.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So give us kind of a sense what the selection we have here. Like, what in your process kind of decided these were the types of beers that we wanted to have, and what are they?
So we mostly do fairly traditional English style ales. Our house yeast is English. Full Bore in particular is probably my favorite. That's our flagship beer, which is a little bit unusual, especially for West Coast, because you don't see a lot of dark beers. But I'm more partial to the darker and maltier beers myself, so I really like that one out of our core beers. We have added a few IPAs and do some seasonal releases as well. IPAs, of course, are all the rage right now. We have a lot of hopheads out here in California, especially.
Is that what you call them? Hopheads?
That's one word for them.
We need to move that phrase to Colorado.
Yeah.
Hopheads. I haven't heard that before.
I do like that. That's not
Yeah.
So you mentioned you got those. Now, is there anything particular that Devil's Canyon does specific to this that might be different than what a general brewer might do in these types of ales?
So one thing that makes us somewhat unique, I think, is actually the construction of the building and the way our equipment's set up. A lot of it has been reclaimed from demolition sites and other places that was basically just going to be thrown away. So that definitely is a big part of our philosophy and the sustainability practices. We have a number of things set up, like to reutilize water when possible. And we try to be as efficient as possible.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, don't waste resources when it can be avoided.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Okay. Yeah. So with that, I mean, in terms of your process, so one of the things we like to do is, like, obviously with the series, we combine data and beer, right? Usually more the latter than the former. But as you're kind of putting this brewing process together, how much is the data that you're getting affect that brewing process, right? I'm kind of assuming that at least in terms of the fermentation process and the mashing process and things like that, you guys are getting temperature readings and things like that. So kind of walk us through how those kind of variables play into the brewing process.
Okay, so it sounds like you at least have a basic idea of some of the processes. So yeah, of course you need to be on point with your temperature is one of the most critical points during your mash-in. So you're constantly monitoring from the grain bed, and then later on, as you're either vorlothing or running off, you're going to want to check the temperature on that, and you're doing pH readings at each stage to make sure that you're within that desired pH range. Other variables would be the grain. So you have basically you're trying to extract the sugars that are held within those barley or wheat or what have you, your cereal grains. So in order to crack those, you have a mill. So it has 2 rollers. And as you're feeding the grain in through there, you need to take samples periodically, and we have a sieve basically. So you'll dump that sample in there, shake it around, and then you can tell by the breakdown, okay, how much is powder or grist, how much is the husk, and that will affect your efficiency. So if you have a very good crush, then you will potentially get more sugar out of it, which means you can get a little bit more volume, and you'll get a better product.
Now, do you have automatic sensors in a lot of these processes, like on the tanks for temperature readings automatically, warnings and things like that you use?
Yeah, so for the tanks, you definitely need to monitor your temperature very closely. But for a lot of the other stuff, especially on the hot side when you're actually brewing, that's all done pretty much manually. So we have temperature readouts, but we don't have a fully automated system where you just punch in, this is what temperature I want, and then it just does the work for you.
It's not the slow cooker of
yeah, so you do need to pay a little bit more attention, but I kind of like that. It keeps you more involved and reminds you what you need to do.
So our teeth all sense that. No, that makes sense. So, we're Colorado boys, and obviously in Colorado, you have one of these microbrews on every corner, right? It's a Starbucks, which is awesome. You guys have really kind of set the stage for microbrewing out in this area, right? So how is that, how is, I guess, California taken to the microbrewery sense?
They've definitely exploded out here as well. I would say probably Portland, and then Bay Area, San Diego, as far as West Coast are kind of the big hotspots. We do have a number. We're we're on the older side, I would say, but there are a number of other ones that came out around the same time as us. Of course, there's Anchor in San Francisco, which has a very storied history, and they're kind of one of the pioneers for at least the Bay Area craft movement. The reason we're in California is the owner actually moved here from New Mexico, like I said.
Yeah.
So this is where we ended up. The location works out really nicely. Actually, originally was a Tesla factory, I believe.
Oh, get out.
Yeah. We actually still have a traffic cone hanging around here that says Tesla on it somewhere.
At least something good is made here now. Oh, I'm sorry. I just say that because I can't afford a Tesla.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, the Model 3
if I
just
could.
came out. The new ones are coming out. Those look pretty good. All right. So I think you kind of mentioned it, but if, they're all your babies, but what's your favorite?
Like I said, for the core beers, I really like the full bore. We do have one series that I'm excited about is we've been doing a lot of smashes, which is single malt and single hop, which allows you to showcase a hop that maybe you might not have had very often. So, for example, actually the beer that I have in front of me right now is a Eureka Smash. Eureka is a hop that I had never used before, and that's kind of the best way to learn about it, right? Because then we just did a straight pale 2-row run, so the malt is relatively neutral, and then you can really pick out the flavor and aroma that's provided by that hop.
That does sound delicious.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, hey, thank you so much for the interview. Again, everyone, we're at Devil's Canyon Brewery here in San Carlos, California. Mark, again, has yet another T-shirt that I have bought him.
Thanks, Nick.
Anytime. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll be back in a second.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out here. Cheers.
Of course.
Cheers.
All right, man. So how do we want to handle this? Because to be fair, I spilled on myself. And
In the first take, Nick Nick spilled on himself during the big Data Chug,
Right.
and I won.
You did win. So
But I'm willing to do a second time.
right. So pause for points. All right. So that being said, if we want to do this a second time, we can.
I'm willing to do it, Nick.
All right. Well, you
Should we call Ashley back up?
Yeah, Ashley. Let's
right.
call Ashley Stirrup back up here again.
So Ashley Stirrup is the Chief Marketing Officer at Talend.
Yep.
He was the judge in the last one. He's going to judge us again. So
Well, this time Nick has to win.
Have to win. Oh, hold on.
Good luck with
hold
that
on.
one.
I gotta apparently get it to where Mark
You
and
already
Arrowhead
warned
is.
them about the beer and
yeah, we talked about the Take Two and how
Got
I
it.
won.
Take two. You know,
beer
I mean,
and Big Bib.
yeah, beer and big.
Yeah, we're going to do a beer and big bib for Nick next time.
You know, I strive to be as best as I can. Sometimes it just doesn't work, Mark.
Yeah.
It's all right, Nick.
All right. So
That's how all the best people are.
No up and down. We're just going to
all right,
cheers and
so
who finishes first.
Before we do that, and Adam is over here stealing one. All right. So before we do this, right? So we'll call out, as we normally do in these episodes, a toast to one of our partners.
Yes.
We've been working very closely with Google lately on a number of webinars. It's been great working with them.
Yes.
So this Big Data Chug is dedicated to all those great people over at Google. All right.
All right. Good luck, guys. Don't get too sloppy.
No, Take Two.
Take two.
Neck and neck. I don't know. Oh, you just got crushed.
I did get
Again. All right, Nick.
again.
Thank you, Ashley.
At least your shirt is clean this
Yes.
time.
Yeah,
this
you
time
can feel that
I
time.
kept it. Right. It's all in. No data errors. All data
Awesome.
processing.
Excellent.
Right. So back
where are
to
we starting?
Right. Back to business. This episode is largely dedicated, like our previous episode, to an industry vertical. For those of you that watched our last episode, we were talking about agriculture. Today we're going to be talking about healthcare and all the different ways that big data has really transformed and digitized this whole process, right? And so how I thought we'd go about doing this is we kind of talk about the smallest piece, right? Go down to the genome sequencing all the way up to some really interesting use cases and how doctors are interfacing with patients and using machine learning, to help solve some of these problems. So
Great.
let's dive right in.
Let's
right?
dive in right into to your first topic. Get your notes, Walter Cronkite. Can't say it.
You can't-
It's just like
I
a
know.
second take. So.
In the news today, hear ye.
What's corn prices today, Walter?
Yeah, right. Pork grinds have gone up $8. No,
All right.
so
Let's get back to
the
business.
seriousness. Right. So one of the, as we're doing the research for this, right, one of the things I found most interesting was kind of the advancements that have been going on in terms of sequencing our genome. Right. So this has been going on for a long time. Many of you maybe heard of, maybe you haven't, the Human Genome Project. Right. Essentially mapping all of the pairs and identifying what makes us human. And so kind of with that, there's been a huge explosion in the capabilities, right? So it kind of started out about a decade ago. Well, rather, it took a decade to focus in on the first time. But because of that, it cost a ton of money, right? $3 billion to sequence it the first time.
The first time.
And it's crazy. And now we're getting down, if I did my research right, to about $1,000 for this type of thing. And a lot of that has come just to the advancements that we're seeing in big data in general.
That's $1,000 per person or patient,
Right,
however
right.
you look at it, right?
Yeah, which I mean is
That's
a very
pretty cheap.
It is probably the most important project that we're going to see in our lifetimes. Right?
Absolutely.
The potential is just limitless. And with that though is just the ability to analyze this information, to collect it, to do this. What I find fascinating about all this is they're estimating by 2025, which is not that far away.
No.
We're going to have to start working at like zettabytes or zettabases of sequencing per year. That's
I don't even know what a zettabyte is. Can you fit a zettabyte in this place?
I'm going to guess. It's take two after all. So at this point, I have no idea.
Yeah, all right.
But that does mean, well, that's just in terms of the processing power. If we look at just the amount of storage, it's exabytes. Anywhere from 2 to 4 exabytes, right, that are going to be running for this type of stuff. That's a lot of data.
That is a lot of data.
Right? And it's crazy. And so really what's kind of kicked off this explosion in the ability to process this data has been, as we've talked about in a previous episode, the frameworks for processing data, right? And so one of the big projects that are in place right now is basically the Genomic toolkit, which is GATK.
Yep.
It has been designed by the Broad Institute, which is a collaboration between MIT and Harvard, and it's all on Spark, right? And so the version 4 that's out there right now is great.
It's on Spark.
Yeah, it's on Spark.
We gotta give it a shot.
We should.
Let's give it a shot.
I think it'd
Challenge.
be interesting. I mean,
Let's see what we can do.
And if there's anyone at the Broad Institute that decided, hey, I'm going to watch two guys drinking talk about my industry, we'd love to work with you, right?
Yeah.
And if I remember,
And I know Google would love to have a shot at it too. So.
yeah, I think in fact doing my research, they're already working with them, so it'd be great.
Excellent.
Just a combination of that.
Yeah, let's do it.
You know, at a minimum, we'll learn some stuff, right? So just aside in terms of the capabilities that we've been talking from just analyzing the genome, I mean, there's huge potential in understanding who we are to provide individualized medicine, which is the difference between, in some cases, life or death.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's why it's so important.
Yeah. So let's go a level higher. And you have some experience. You've worked in this industry before. So now let's talk about how this is kind of revolutionizing or really improving the ways that pharmaceuticals are being.
Yeah. So definitely. I've worked in the pharma industry for a while, and I worked on the commercial side, but I have a lot of friends that work in the R&D side, including my wife, who is a laboratory information management systems expert. And there's lots of up and downs there. But one of the things that's very interesting in that space is, I don't think a lot of people understand what it takes to get a single molecule, once it's discovered, all the way to phase 3 in trials. So, which means if you pass that, you can then go to FDA and get it approved as an actual drug. And so there's kind of two phases. There's the first part where you go through the discovery and testing of the molecules, and that alone can cost almost $500 million or more, depending on how long it takes. And that's
a lot of money.
That's just testing the molecule and figuring out what it is. And 10, 15 years ago, that took it took a lot of data to do the tests in the laboratory information systems, or LIMS as they call them, and other applications. It recorded a ton of data.
Okay.
10, 15 years ago, that was, you couldn't process it. It was so much data. So the data scientists, who everybody thinks is new, Susie, what the heck, man? You're killing me. All right. So anyway,
You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me.
You're killing me, Smalls. So anyway, back then, what the data scientists did, part of their job was figuring out the algorithms for sampling the data. So coming up with a valid sample set of the data, and they literally would take 7% of the data, 7 to 10% of the data, to determine which molecules should move on to the next phase.
Wait, hold on. 7 to 10%?
Yes, 7 to 10% of the data. It was because of the limitations of the processing applications they used. The databases, the storage, everything. But now with Spark and Hadoop and the ability to, at a very low cost, get to the point where, hey, I can process all the data. I don't need to sample it anymore. I can look at all the test data on these molecules and determine, do I want to spend another 100 million, another 200 million on this one molecule to move it to the next phase, and determine, where do I want to go with this drug? Is this a molecule that could become a drug that's going to cure cancer, right? And there are so many molecules that have just been put on a shelf.
Right.
I say shelf, figuratively. But they've been put on the shelf because they didn't pass the test. So, I have friends in the industry that, hey, we're actually going back, 15, 20 years of data, going back and looking at these molecules and determining maybe we should retest these and determine whether maybe we could move these forward to solve some of these diseases that are killing people, cancer and other things. So, it's a huge benefit that we have these platforms that can process this much data. It's amazing.
Right. No, I mean, it really speaks to, again, the ability to create better drugs that are potentially different varieties, right, to help for individualized patients and things like that. I mean, it's really interesting, and we're really looking forward to seeing how this type of stuff moves forward. Certainly, it's already there today. Now, outside of that, right, so we've kind of talked about
The next step.
right. So, okay, we understand who you are. We've been able to create drugs that are specific to your needs. Let's talk about how this could influence the interaction between patient and doctor, right? And so, as part of this and doing the research on how this is working, we wanted to make sure that we kind of got some of that information. So I found this really interesting story about how we've been using machine learning to better identify heart attacks quicker, right? And using machine learning to find, I think it's 4 times quicker than the doctors are able to. And that really, I mean, all of us have probably dealt with some family member that's had some cardiac issue. So the ability that, that 4 times faster, that's the difference between life and death.
It is.
Right? And
that's, and that comes down to wearables, what they call wearables. So, I had a Garmin Fitbit, it's broken right now. And
I also spilled beer all over it.
I'm sure. But yeah, like Garmin Fitbit or Fitbits, Garmin's, all the smart, the Apple Watch, all Garmin's, or the Samsung Frontier, they all track your fitness, but those are tracking your activity and things like that. And we have a great demo of Talend that shows that.
Yeah.
But beside that, doctors are using that technology now to help identify things in advance. So especially in diabetes and heart, patients that are at high risk for heart attacks, wearables are huge. They're the data that they give to physicians at real time.
Yeah.
Not a day later or a week later, but real-time alerts are being sent to physicians saying, hey, your patient's, blood sugar levels are dipping way low, or their heart is, acting irregular. We need to take action on that stat. These are the types of things that, the physicians are taking action on with these wearables. And, it's a wearable or IoT, sensor basically that you're wearing that tells your physician these things. There's scales that, there's scales with Wi-Fi now that tell your physician your weight as it goes up or down over time. So there's a lot of great things out there that are helping physicians and patients have a much more real-time interaction to track their data.
Right, and studies have shown that patients recover better in an area, like essentially at home. So it's really great to see that that's kind of going on. What I think will be really interesting is seeing how this new data source, if you will, for information in the healthcare space will have an effect on the existing kind of status quo, right? So many of us have worked with HL7 formats and things like that, right, where it's kind of standard. But how it'll be really interesting to see how this IoT and real-time data is going to create maybe even potentially a new HL7 message type, right?
Oh, HL7, my favorite.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Right. I'm sorry. There's a little PTSD here, folks. We apologize.
It is. But HL7 is great. It's a great format. It's a standardization that the healthcare industry uses.
It needed, of course.
And that systems can interact with each other. Systems like Epic and Cerner, and people like us at Talend can then take that data because it's a standard, and do processing on it. So even though I have some past history with HL7, it's a good thing.
It is, and we need it. But essentially, it'll be really fascinating to see the evolution of that protocol to support these new data types.
And it will evolve.
Right, it has to. Right. So and you kind of mentioned it was really interesting because you kind of talked about wearables and the capabilities, and I actually ran into a story where they were saying essentially a wife was able to identify that her husband was having a heart attack because his heart rate sensors were going crazy. Right? And it indicated that there was something wrong. And there's just so many ways that this is actually improving our daily lives, which kind of leads us to the last use case that we wanted to talk about, right? And it's an amazing story of hope, which is one of our customers who is in the space, which is UNOS. So if you haven't heard of UNOS before, it's essentially United Network for Organ Sharing, right? Now, it's a private, non-for-profit organization that manages our nation's organ transplant system, and they work with the government, right? And so they've got these great algorithms that are sitting there and able to kind of match patients with potential organs that exist within a 24 to 48 hour period. which is critical because some of those organs, they don't have, as you mentioned, they don't have a good shelf life, right?
No.
I mean, we need to get them in now.
Shelf life on organs. Come on, Nick.
I just imagine this
Yeah.
vault of
I think you're referring back to our ag
Right.
session last time where there's a shelf life for produce.
But,
These are organs.
But I mean that's the interesting thing is, I
Yes.
mean, that it is very critical that we handle that velocity, right? I mean,
Yes.
and the volatility, because that data. So we're talking about some of the big D's, the big V's of data, where essentially, again, take two. No,
We're all feeling it too.
Oh God, yeah. Where the V's of big data really are impacted by this,
Yes.
and the fact that this type, it's not something that's going to sit around for a while. And so how this works within UNOS is essentially they create what they call an organ offer report, and that information is then sent to all of the hospitals within their network. It allows physicians and surgeons to be able to get the information, so all the biostatistics about the organ, as well as then their history of taking organs from this, to be able to then better decide whether it's going to work. Now, as we've joked before, right, at some point we're probably going to need new livers, right? If this
Yes.
series continues
Especially
much longer.
take two.
Yeah, take two livers. But the idea that essentially, like, let's say we have different doctors and we're both in for liver transplants because we've been doing this for too long.
Too long.
And your doctor then decides, hey, there's a liver that's available. It would be a match for Mark, but I'm not comfortable because it doesn't meet my criteria. And maybe my doctor has a different way of identifying the criteria for his organs. And so he uses that organ, and then it's very successful in my transplant. The ability then for those doctors to go back and look at the historical information so that they can better understand how those organs are doing, what they're working with, to really make sure that, I mean, these are precious components, precious commodities. And it's
a new definition of precious commodities.
right. I mean,
organs.
right. But I mean, in the sense that, like, we need to make sure that those are working successfully, that
Yes.
they're going the right place, and UNOS does an excellent job using this data to get the information out as quickly as possible.
It's a great story.
Right, yeah.
It's a great customer, and a great story of how we help. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've been talking about all the great things that are available in the healthcare space. But I want to take a moment to talk about more of the darker side of what could potentially happen here.
The dark side.
The dark side, right? No, I mean, look, we're in a situation, as we've seen before in other areas of science, where culturally things become unacceptable because of how it's used, right? And so we've been talking about the ability to sequence our genomes, to better create medications, to better understand and essentially track and see vital signals. So there's a lot of very personal information that is going out. And so what I'd like to do is talk about a new V of big data.
Oh, a new V.
A new V, right?
Let's start a new trend.
Yeah.
I like
the new
the
V.
fifth V.
Well, no, it'd be the 11th V. So there's
wait.
already 10.
Oh my gosh.
So because
I'm so behind on time. There's 11. There's 10 V's already.
Hear
Come on,
ye,
Walter.
hear ye. No, so the 10. So you have your volume, your velocity, the variety, the variability, the veracity, validity, vulnerability. Yeah, volatility.
I'm getting schooled on this now. I hope in the video we can list those on the
Yes.
screen. Thanks, Nick.
The visualization and the value, right? So the 10 V's, and this is the latest I could find. There might be more, but what I
There
wanted.
goes my buddy Chris.
Yeah, so it is. You post that we're going to do one of these things at work, and everyone shows up. So
Yeah.
we apologize for the riffraff. But no, so we've been talking about the 10 V's, right?
Yep.
The latest one I could find. And the fact that, look, there's so much personal information here. I'd like to introduce the 11th V that I think we should take into consideration, which is the virtue of data.
And we talked about this a little bit last segment in episode 3 with the ag and how farmers are worried about the validity of the data impacting the prices
Yes.
that they get on their crops.
Right.
But this is totally different.
Right.
But it's still the same concept.
Yeah, it is, and it's very valuable in the sense that, like, I hate to bring up like Ben Parker from Spider-Man, but with great power comes great responsibility. And the fact that we can literally sequence our genomes, it's an amazing feat, and is going to provide so much benefit to us. But used incorrectly, could create huge issues where then society is going to look at this as a taboo, and then we're not going to be able to gain the benefit of what's available, right? And so we look at this from a perspective of where we're dealing with in society today, where essentially we're not entirely sure as a culture how we want to handle pre-existing conditions. Could you imagine what it would be like if we had this precog, if you will, or predictive, where hey, you might have this problem, so we can't insure you.
Or we can 90% predict that you're going to have this problem.
Right.
So therefore, we're not going to cover you. That's a big issue. That's
right.
a big concern of a lot of people. So.
Right. And so that's why I think it's very important not only to identify the value of that data, but understanding just because you have it, how are you going to use it?
I'm pretty sure Trump would support that too.
Let's try to keep the politics out of this, Mark. It's fine. But no, I mean, it's a very important concept, right?
It is. It's yeah.
We hate to get serious during this, but it is take two, so we've had a lot to drink, and at this point, we're very sentimental.
And thank you, Susie, for getting me another beer.
Right. Well, look, bow down to the champion. I might. You know what? I think at some point I might have to phone a friend. I mean, I can't beat you.
Are you conceding, Nick?
I'm not conceding. But what I think we might do is call in a ringer.
Oh, who are we calling in?
Well, so you have one last beer. I have one last beer.
You have 3 last beers.
I do have 3 last beers, but I see that there's
who
one
are we calling
beer.
in?
I would like to call in Kieran Dines.
Oh, Kieran Dines.
All right.
Oh, no.
Product.
We can't call in the Irish guy.
No, we got to call in the Irish guy.
For what?
If we got that kind of talent, I got to bring in someone that can actually challenge you.
Challenge me to a chug?
Yeah, I can challenge you to chug. Right? So,
all right,
with
Kieran.
this in mind,
Kieran,
I'd like to call, hey, Kieran, come here.
So we're bringing in Kieran Dines.
I'm phoning
VP
a friend
of
because I lost.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Senior VP of
Yeah.
products.
Yeah.
at
So,
Talend, right? How's it going today?
Very good, yeah, enjoy.
Good.
I'm going to step aside. This one's for you.
Oh, what are we drinking?
I'm phoning a friend.
So-
this one would be the Dedicated, which is the amber ale here. So
apparently Nick can't beat me.
I can't.
So
beat
he's
him.
called in my former boss
Right.
to chug a beer with
Okay.
me.
So it's for the fans.
Wow.
It's for the fans.
All right, cool. How long are you going to count down?
No, we're just going
Perfect.
All right. I don't know who won.
Kieran won. Yeah, that was well done, sir. That was well done.
I'll concede to an Irish man.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
For pride and country. No. So, we've covered some really great use cases.
Yes.
We've spent some time here talking with the brewery and the amazing stuff that we were able to learn about what they're doing. I think there's not much more we can do with this episode. So
No, it's been a great episode, and talking about data in the healthcare industry, and we can dig in on any one of those topics even deeper if we want later on. But
Right.
I hope it's been a great session for people to understand, how data in the world of healthcare and health, the life sciences as they call it, and how between those two fields, really what's going on today. So I hope it's been educational as well.
So, again, thank you so much. My name's Nick.
I'm Mark Balkenende.
Until our next beer, have a good one.
See you.